All right, everybody. I am so excited to be back here for the Empire Self podcast. Here we're going to be talking about all those things that are keeping us from being our best, bright, brilliant, sparkling self. It shines a light of hope and inspiration on our lives and on others. Because we've become an empire to ourselves, we can tap into our purpose. We can tap into our power. Because we've got an empire of self, we can drive our lives into our dreams. I'm so thrilled to be back here, everybody. It's been a few months. Actually, it's been even longer than a few months. Let's look at it. It's almost been a year and a half. And there have been a lot of changes in my life. You know, first thing that happened was I stopped doing Empire Self podcast. I switched it up. I turned it over into Seeds of Change podcast. Why did I make that shift? And that shift was out of fear. Man, fear over the past 2 years crept back into my life. Fear had always been in my life, right? But it hadn't really taken hold. It hadn't really dictated many of my moves for many, many years. In fact, getting out of addiction, that's what you have to do. You have to learn how to live with that fears. You have to learn how to live with that anxiety. And I found a way to do that. For 5 years, I stayed so rooted, watching the fears come into my life, just like thoughts just passing through. And then somewhere along the line, as I started to develop, I think, into my potential and into my purpose and into my passion, I started to develop more fear. And I noticed that happens. That happens anytime that we're growing, and certainly happens anytime that we're slipping backwards. But in a more insidious and sneaky way, it happens also when we're growing. When we're slipping backwards, the fear is pretty obvious. We see, relationships failing. We see jobs failing. We see all sorts of things happening in front of our eyes that are uncomfortable. But when we're progressing, the fears that we start experiencing are different than those types of visceral fears of failure. Instead, these are fears of stepping into your true self. The fears of stepping into your true self have got to be more daunting, right? Because where there are lies, there's probably 100,000 of them, right? But where there's truth, there's only one. And so by accepting the truth, you're only accepting the one. Seems like stepping into a lie might even be easier. In fact, it seems like that is easier. Because that's where I end up. I end up in the lie. I end up in the fear. I end up holding myself back. I end up making big changes that otherwise affect the trajectory of my passion and my purpose, such as changing the name from Empire Self to Seeds of Change podcast. I did that out of fear. I had so many different people confused. Why would you make a podcast called Empire Self? How selfish of you. How narcissistic of you. How egocentric of you. How are you supposed to have a podcast called Empire Self? Well, part of the podcast of Empire Self is actually accepting that very evil aspect of the ego, of the shadow, that darkness, that narcissism. Yes, that is there. And until you recognize it in yourself, I don't think you're ever going to be able to get out of it. The first thing we have to do when we see a wall is to look at it. If we turn away from that wall, we ain't going to ever be able to climb it. We got to step away. We got to adjust ourselves appropriately. We got to step back. We got to look at it. We got to assess it. We got to see if there's any other challenges in front of it. And then we have to climb it. And recognizing that we're all narcissists. The world simply revolves around us. That's the starting point. That's the starting point. That's the starting point. That's the center of it all. You could start there. Then you can start to navigate on what it means inside and what it means outside. In other words, what it means looking in at you and what it means looking out at from you. Therefore, you start to define the world. You start to recognize it. But it's all got to start within that self. That is the empire self. That is the ray of light. That's the lighthouse of the self. And when I switched to seeds of change, I switched to seeds of change because the conditioning in my life has always been to reject that self, reject that flesh, project instead that flesh onto the cross, give it to Jesus, let it die, and then become a vessel for the projections of the Christian faith and the church and the doctrine set therein. So I did that. I did the same thing as any other Christian would. I sacrificed myself on the cross and the altar to do the will of what they would like you to believe, God. But what it truly was just the will of an insecure world and a lost world and a world still listening to the lie. Well, we're all listening to a little bit of the lie. There'll never be a way out of that as long as we're here. We have to accept that notion that that's real, that's there. As I began to dive into this Seeds of Change podcast, I began to develop a sense of shallowness. I was seeking, inspiration. I was seeking enlightenment outside of myself. I was seeking it inside of archaic, book, the Bible, seeking it for inspiration. I changed my daily devotionals from being awe-inspired by creation and by existence into the small box of inspiration of the Bible. And that was all that my mind was willing to look into. Why? Because of fear. Because of fear. Because of as I turned on my empire of self light and it began to shine inside of my life, I began to recognize that all of the people and all of my past parts of myself that wanted so badly to fit in with everybody else and to just be like every other person, to be able to follow this God, this Christ, and to be able to just simply believe it and to be able to just simply live it so that I could also have eternal life. And as my light started to shine inside of my life, I started to recognize that there was no way I could have both. I can't. I can't let my light shine and also find recognition and love and inclusion from those in my family or from those out there in the world whatsoever. Unfortunately, when I broke from the empire self, I fell into a dependency. At first, I fell into a codependent relationship with a woman that I believed saved me from being gay. Yay. And then I fell into a codependent relationship with God. I noticed this codependence with God because feelings and codependency are when you can't allow yourself to have feelings if they're not reflected by that of the other. Because codependent relationships I've always had, and they destroy my life. They become all I can think about. They become a source of anxiety rather than pleasure and excitement about life. And when I develop this codependency, what's there left to do but kick and scream and fight until you get out of the chains that you've built for yourself? Codependency in God functions so much like codependency in a relationship for me. I start to experience feelings, and then I have to check them. I experience thoughts, and I have to check them. Are these thoughts what my lover, what my God, what my Savior would be thinking? And then in that split second, there's a judgment cast upon myself. Less than. the exact opposite of becoming an empire as yourself, for 2 years. For 2 years, I lived in there. Less than, less than, less than. And then I found myself at the pit of despair. I found myself back at a place that I was about 10 years ago when I was first trying to give up drugs and alcohol. I found myself spiraling out of control. Thoughts leading into suicide. Thoughts leading into homicide. The narcissism that I had was now turning against me and against others and against my own success and my own trajectory and my own purpose in life because of a codependent relationship on a father that doesn't exist, on a father that doesn't need to exist. Why, just because we see spirit and we see energy, must there be some sort of Godhead driving it all? The truth is, there doesn't need to be a Godhead driving it all. In fact, the only Godhead that needs to drive it all is the oneness that we all are. But how? How can we be that oneness if we're codependent? The codependence creates that duality, and we can't seem to break from it. We're stuck in it. It drives me mad. And that's when I end up codependent, because I reckon that's when I end up suicidal. When I have codependence takes me all the way down to this plate of disparity where I feel like I can't even move. I'm immobilized. And at that point, I start craving drugs and alcohol, some sort of release, some sort of freedom. Why am I stuck in these chains? This organization is telling me that they offer freedom. Why? Why do I become stuck? The stickiness, the stuckness, I see it all the way from our political systems, all the way down to the individual who just can't seem to get out of bed. That stuckness that I used to have, the individual who can't seem to get out of addictions and alcohol. The stuckness that I had, I can't seem to get out of depression. Now I notice it. Now I notice my depression. Now I notice my stuckness. Now I noticed as I was trying to do this podcast for everyone else and the approval that I began to lose myself. Inspiration drifted. The magic of life dissipated at my fingertips. Where was I going? What was I going to do? All of a sudden, I started having existential crises. Who was I? What was my purpose? I own a skincare line now. I've written a book. I'm a speaker. I'm a this. I'm a that. And then all of a sudden, it was all crashing down on me. I'm none of these. I've done nothing. I am nothing. I am nothing. And this soul-crushing experience, I recognized it right before it killed me. Literally, right before it killed me. Literally. I'm not joking, guys. When I drink alcohol, I get suicidal pretty quickly. The last time, it was within one beer. One time that I chugged a beer. This is 10 years ago. One time I chugged a beer. The next thing I knew, I was in the hospital after attempting suicide and overdosing on a whole bottle of Xanax. That was the last time. And before that, I had been sober for about 3 years, maybe 2. But that's where I go. That's where I was headed. And I knew I was headed there because in my mind, I started to say, have a drink, have a drink, have a drink. At the same time, in my mind, I sleep with a gun next to me, and I started thinking about suicide. There would be times when I'd be laying in bed, and I would think I wouldn't be able to control myself. I would fear the fact that I might even wake up in the middle of the night, not being able to control my movements, and I would stick a gun in my mouth and shoot myself. That's where I was only 3 months ago. And I had been that state for probably like 6 months. And so that is why I stopped doing Seeds of Change podcast. And I went into a hiatus for however long it's been. I went into reclusion. I didn't have anything for y'all. I didn't have any inspiration. I had become lost, absolutely lost, and absolutely weighed down by the weight of this burden that we all place on ourselves, this undue burden on ourselves that keeps us stuck. And it's the very, very system, this system that we live in, that we live under. This system is not an American system, y'all. This system is a system that's been around since the dawning of time. The system is a system that's been fighting the natural system since the very beginning. Human beings are not made to fight the natural system. We are made to be stewards of the natural system. We're the only animal on this planet who can actually control the elements for good. There's not other animals can consume it, and they can take part in a little piece of the puzzle. We could actually do the whole thing. We can do the whole thing, and we can create things. So therefore, I know that we've got to be the stewards. Also means that we have the most responsibility. And the very constructs of religion and societies that are built off of religion, what they do is they take the components of nature, the driving forces of nature, and they create some sort of godhead that then controls it. And that is the disjunct, this godhead that controls it. All of a sudden, we're supposed to be like this godhead that controls it and controls us. Therefore, we're starting to be wanting to control nature. We want to use it for our purpose and for our will. That's the very opposite of what we're supposed to do. That's not what a steward does whatsoever. A steward makes sure everything's functioning correctly. A steward doesn't just try to go in and control it all. But that's what we do. We look towards the Godhead. We look towards that masculine spirit to kind of control it all so that we can be in love. But the problem is, if we let the masculine spirit control it all, we will not find love. And that love is a balance. Love is the very center of it all. Love is the beacon of light that's shining inside of your heart. And this little beacon of light is the balance between that masculine and feminine, the sun and the moon, the night and the darkness, the cold and the hot. This is the balance that we got to seek. This is the balance that we got to seek. When we find this balance and we find this center of self and we find this uniting force, then our ego and our narcissism becomes an aid to us. It becomes a seat upon which we can look at how obscure our very own perception is. We can look at how very diluted our own perception is. We can see all the conditioning in our life that is keeping us out of balance. That's the goal of mindfulness. That's the goal of meditation. As you sit there and take breath, you recognize all the distractions, all the illusions that are not of the breath, of the present, of the balance between hot and cold, moist and dryness that's breathing into you right now. It's aiding in your thoughts and your heartbeat and everything. The center of that is your breath, the balance, the ray of light. What empire does not have a big old ray of light right in the center? Not a cross, not a cross, not a cross. No way, not a cross. A cross isn't it. It's a beam of light near a star. That's the center. A cross is some illusion on the outside, some way of tapping into the projections in the ego of another. And transcending that, by the way. The cross is a very fundamental tool, but the issue is we get stuck on it. You can't get stuck on it. Seeds of change had to go away because it was a construct of projections of others. Empire self has to come back because it is a projection of my light, and that is what I'm going to shine. Because I remember when I was a little kid hearing this one song, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I would listen to that song over and over, and I'd go, man, I'm gonna let my light shine. But then, every time that I went out into the world, I had to close my little light. Empire self is my declaration. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Empire self is my light. I have found an empire that I can live in, that I can reside in, that I can find peace in, that I can eat, that I can find sustenance, that I can find relationships from. It's the little light that I was born with. It's the little light that came with me into this life, and it's the little light that will go with me when I leave. And my goal is to use Empire Self to reach up a big, strong light in the middle of the desert so that all of y'all who have big, strong lights out there as well, we can connect them. Just like what we see when we look at a power grid. We can see all these little lights being connected. That's what we're doing now. We're setting up, this is the dawning of a new aeon. You can view it technologically like that, like the little power grid. You can view it more metaphysically, or you can view it more cosmically, looking at all the stars. Or however you want to see it, visualize it now with me. Visualize your life with a light shining all the way up above it. A light so bright that all the world can see it. A light so bright that it's standing up and there's so many little homes and stuff down underneath it. And that light, where it reaches, it sees other lights off in the distance. And it connects with them via their lights. Empire after empire after empire, connecting with tribes of people seeking after that gorgeous empire of self-light that resides within them. And then we start tapping into the power grid, y'all. Let's start tapping into that power grid. And that power grid, once we start tapping it in, we're going to see it waving, just like the ocean waves, just like the Wi-Fi waves, just like the radio waves. We're going to be tapped into each other's goodness. Everybody, that is the goal. Tap into each other's goodness. Find your purpose. Find your message. Find your voice. Get out there and be the fucking empire of self that you deserve to be. Stop squandering your time here. Give us your fullness, because we need you to be you on this planet. Give us every little bit of you, because we need you in your fullness, your full empire of self. Or there's people, there's tribes around you that are not being built. There's trauma happening. There's death happening. There's people being stuck because you're not living your fullness. So step out into your power right now, because you have a purpose. You have a purpose, and you have a great mission in front of you. You have a great mission in front of you to explore the inner workings of yourself. Explore them. Explore them like Christopher Columbus, like some of our best explorers, whoever you want to use. Explore them inside of your heart. Explore just like they would, searching for new lands, searching for new perspectives and new ways. Don't look so far outside of yourself. Stop looking at every single fucking TikTok. Use this as a reminder to dive inside. Look inside of yourself. Create. Shine your light. Watch it shine. Watch the effect of it as on other people. The minute a thought starts coming in and starts to tell you to be a little bit less, I should be a little bit less. I want you to smile at the next person. The next time you feel like you need to move your eyes away from somebody because of whatever, maybe it's a fear or whatever's inside of you that moves away, hold in the intimacy, in the moment. Make love deeply in the moment of eye contact. Feel how if you make eye contact with somebody, you can spur the burst of oxytocin inside of your blood. You can literally go through an orgasm based off of your blood. As this is a message for you to begin to tap deeper into yourself and don't do what I did, and start to tap in to those lies of the world, the traumas, the institutions. You have it within you. You have the answer within you. I had it within me. And once again, I took a step in the wrong direction. For 20 years now, I have been trying to practice this and trying to look into myself, go into yoga, go into mindfulness, go into meditation. Then I come back and I start running and screaming and scared. And I run back into the church thinking I'm going to find my hope and happiness there, thinking that I'm going to find the love and respect of my Father. And then all I'm left with is despair. No more. I'm done with that. It's so far behind me now. I spent the last year and a half getting over that. I'm done with that trauma. I'm not putting myself into that crap again. And I hope that my message today is one of those of hope, that if you're going through something, maybe, I don't know where you are along that path, but the goal is that you start to look inside of yourself, and that I might be a reminder that within you is everything that you need, because you are brilliantly and perfectly and wonderfully a star sparkle. You've been going on in this time, shining so bright. No matter what you do, you ain't going to be able to turn that brightness off, so you might as well just shine it, baby. Because when you do, you shine it and it helps other people. So let's go on out into the world today. Let's help other people. Everybody, I am Mark Turnipseed, and this has been Seeds of Change podcast. No, you got me. It's been the Empire Self podcast. Oh, man, what a wonderful time it's been to get back on this microphone and spit my stuff. I just love you guys so much. I love talking. I love just loving. I love just feeling and seeing where we go. So let's see where we go around this next term. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow me on TikTok, Instagram at Mark A. Turnipseed. You can also go to markaturnipseed.com and find my publications and past recordings.